1 second, Ralph.
No problem.
Okay, you're good.
Great, thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. At this time, we will reconvene our meeting that started at 6:15 this evening. We apologize for the delay, but as you know, we first evening with our new superintendent, which we'll welcome in a few minutes. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Mr. Smythe, roll call and Sunshine Act, please.
We've already done the sunshine, so we'll take a roll call as we reconvene the public. Mr. Garth.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Krupa.
Here.
Ms. Mangan.
Here.
Mr. Nasser.
Here.
Mr. Sanfilippo.
Here.
Ms. Stites. Ms. Stites.
I believe she said she's here.
Mr.
Here.
Mondrak.
There you go.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Anizia.
Here. Thank you. So before we get started with our committee meetings, I'd like to welcome Dr. Handerhan. This evening is her first meeting. Today is day number 2 on her new adventure with us. And we appreciate that she has jumped right in and she has been burning the midnight oil. So welcome. And we look forward to a great relationship with you and very excited to see the direction our district goes. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very excited.
Okay. So at this time, we will start with policy. And Dr. Gleason, Dr. Hannon,
Okay, with policy, we are on second readings this evening. We have the postnatal accommodations. We also are reading as a second reading the school year and school closings regarding the revisions. Are there any questions that I can answer?
looks like none.
Okay.
Actually, I do, Doctor. Assuming, again, these are kind of like abstract questions, assuming that we were to go into a normal, regular school routine of, you know, everybody goes to school, all the teachers report on the first day of school.
Okay.
School calendar moving forward, do you anticipate, if we ever got to that point again, with knowing that we can work remotely, do you ever foresee building in snow days into future calendars? Or is that kind of like a thing of the past that young kids today are never going to know the joy of getting the school closed message, you know, go back to bed and go build snowmen?
Well, I actually ironically had that conversation with a colleague today. It's difficult. I can't imagine going backwards, quite frankly. You know, I think some would depend on how long a snowstorm might last. But I think that there are a lot of superintendents watching to see if, you know, these allowances that came in that were birthed out of an emergency will move forward. So a lot depends on that, whether digital days will be permitted. Digital days were not permitted prior to the COVID closure. So we are operating under that right now. And it's sometimes hard to put the genie back in the bottle.
Anybody else? Any questions on the policies? Seeing none. That is it for policy. So they will be on for our next meeting. All right, we will move ahead to curriculum and instruction. Dr. Gleason, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Agnasio. Good evening, everyone. We have 2 items on the curriculum and instruction agenda. The first one is just an update to the summer remediation program. If you recall, last month, we discussed where we were with identified students and putting together a summer bridge or remediation program to address some of the skill gaps in grades K through 12. We did not have enough enrollment to run courses at the high school level, but we are running courses for grades K through 8. And the teachers will be working in primarily English language arts and in math for those classes. We have 105 students enrolled in the program across grades K through 8. The program begins on July 28th, and it will run 3 days a week from 8:30 in the morning until 10:30 for instruction. And this will be live instruction with teachers and in small groups. This will not be asynchronous learning. We are providing some professional development for the summer remediation teachers. We have a trainer actually from the Wall Township community that introduced herself to us, and she's going to be providing an hour workshop right before the program begins. The workshop is called Effective Strategies in Virtual Instruction. So we're going to be able to provide some additional support for teachers, and we hope to bring that same trainer back for the rest of our staff as well before they begin with our modified schedule, which will include, we anticipate, some more virtual instruction. We're working very closely with one of our assessment vendors that we've used for the last couple of years. And they are working with the supervisory team to create baseline assessments, both for the summer remediation program as well as September. One of the areas that we have to address is where are our kids after school closure, brick and mortar closure, and as a result of virtual learning. And we can't presume to know where they are. So we fortunately have been working with a digital assessment company for the 3 years that I've been here. They're working with us to develop those baseline assessments. They're digital assessments and they're computer scored. So as soon as the students take those baseline assessments on the first day, the teacher will immediately have information about how students are doing against the key focus standards in ELA and math. So we're really pleased to be having a starting point rather than just sort of guessing where kids are. And so that's where we are with the summer remediation program. Does anyone have any questions? Erin?
I'm just curious, which benchmark assessment are you utilizing?
We're working with Measuring Up, and they're creating customized assessments. We're not using a packaged assessment. So what we did was the supervisors provided the vendor with the key standards that were missed during that time. So in the curriculum from March through June, as well as the focus standards that preceded it, so that we can kind of get a foundation on where they were with the standards they should have secured, as well as the standards that they learned really just in virtual learning. So we're really creating custom assessments for the students. They'll be brief. For the summer program, the assessments will take about 30 to 40 minutes for each content area. And again, it's a starting point to, they're not used for grades, they won't be used for placement purposes, but they will be used so that teachers can really customize their instruction.
Is the program going to be able to like customize instruction throughout in between each benchmark assessment during the summer? Is that part of the package?
So it's not in the summertime. There will be a beginning assessment because the course only runs for 4 weeks. There will only be a beginning of course assessment and an end of course assessment. And I think that's important so we can measure the effectiveness of the program and the instruction. Once we come back to school in September, in whatever format that may be, then we will be in more of a formalized series of benchmarks where we'll have a September benchmark and possibly, you know, at minimally one mid-year and then one end of year, if not 2 mid-year. But for the summer program, because it's pretty fast and furious over 4 weeks, we'll only have a beginning and end of course. Now, with that said, many of our teachers in grades 2 through 8 are very familiar with this program. We purchased this program 3 years ago in the district. And so teachers have the ability to go ahead and use the program to create mini benchmarks and sort of little diagnostics along the way. So that's not to say that teachers won't use the program as well, but from a formal assessment standpoint, we'll only be measuring beginning and end for the 4 weeks in the summer.
And will the live lessons be consistently for 2 hours, or is there going to be a break period and then like the student can go do individual work and then receive corrections?
Yeah.
How is that framework going to look?
So the framework is, we know that students, definitely at the elementary grade levels, and I would even argue at the middle school level, could not stay online for 2 hours. Teachers, that's not good instruction. It's not best practice. So the framework is structured in a way that the teachers will all begin with their entire class with a live mini lesson for approximately 20 to 25 minutes. And then the students have an assignment in their Google Classroom or whatever platform the teacher is using. And then the teacher has assigned small groups and will rotate through the small groups. And then we're leaving that to the teacher to see if he or she is going to bring them back for a full group closure at the end of the lesson. It really depends upon the size of the class. Some sections have only 12 in a section, and then some of our grade levels have upwards of 21, more like a regular class. So we want to give the teacher some autonomy in some of the structure, but it will be live and it will include whole class instruction so they can see their peers, which is really important for them. And then it will be small group through the rest of the 2 hours.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We also, this morning, I put out an email to families that we have online asynchronous or static instruction for grades K through 5. We had our teachers work on that, 2 teachers each grade level in K through 5. And this was a great recommendation from one of our community members for students who were not identified for the summer remediation program, or students who might not be able to participate. Parents were asking, could we provide something beyond the traditional summer reading and summer assignments, something a little more structured and guided, but that could be done independently by students. So that is now up on the website. Parents can find that under on each elementary schools page, as well as the district site under the curriculum tab. Any other questions? Yes.
2 questions. Did were we able to meet all the expectations of children who were identified and get them enrolled? And then how many kids actually did enroll, or what percentage of kids enrolled based on the identified number?
We had a total of 579 students identified by teacher recommendation. If you remember, there was the 2 criteria, and we had 105 that enrolled. Quite honestly, while it was disappointing not to have more enrolled, we anticipated, with it being a virtual program and a summer program that's virtual, we anticipated that that might be the case. And it did turn out to be that way. So we have about 18% of our identified students enrolled in the program.
So I know we don't want to, dig too deep, but will we do any research to find out if it was because of the virtualness or because parents maybe didn't feel their kid belonged in that program per se? And then what's the game plan to alleviate the identified remediations that we see as necessary for 380 some children?
So in terms of if they were in the right program, let me just understand what you mean by that first question, Russell. Are you talking about the program that they were in prior to school closure?
No, I think maybe I misinterpreted it, but the teachers answered 2 questions, which identified 579 kids, correct?
Correct.
Is it possible that the parents didn't believe that that program was necessary, that their kids were okay and didn't need that program, is what I'm saying, as to why maybe they didn't come?
Potentially. I did speak with several parents that, more than several, I talked to quite a few parents that called rather than just RSVP'd through the Google form. And the biggest challenges that were, as many parents are returning to work, they were enrolling their children in morning camps, and or having other plans. And the other reason that some parents gave was that it was really challenging for children to be in virtual learning 5 days a week, and they needed a break. That was, from the words of some parents. So I think there were a variety of reasons. I think the identification was authentic, the two criteria. And we had some parents that asked if their child could be enrolled, even though they weren't identified. And they felt that they needed more support. And we were able to accommodate those parents as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, I think certainly most importantly is the topic of school reopening. And we've been touching upon this as we've been waiting for the guidance from the governor and the Department of Education. On June 26th, we finally received a document from the Department of Education that I know you're familiar with. I sent you copies of it, called The Road Back. And the Road Back guidance document provides 4 key areas that schools are required to focus on in reopening schools. The spirit of the document and the message from the Department of Education and the governor is that the expectation is that we are returning to schools in some format. That format of that return is left to districts, provided that it includes some form of modified live instruction. We were provided guidance last week during the superintendent's roundtable that a virtual only option is not an option that districts can provide. So we're currently looking at we're researching multiple models, and we've been doing that with the administrative staff for almost 2 months now. We have really sort of honed in on one model that we're trying to work through, and we'll be really focusing upon with our Restart and Recovery Committee. As I mentioned, we met last week with the steering committee, and tomorrow we have a large group of about 45 people. That is, they are on the Restart and Recovery Committee. They include district leadership, union leadership, teachers, liaisons from all of the bargaining unit from the collective bargaining agreement. We have our school physician, we have our head nurses. I don't know if I'm missing anyone, but it's a large group, and now we have hopefully 3 board members attending as well. And it is widely representative of the community. And we're going to be looking at those key areas, but our focus tomorrow will be on the 15 critical factors for school reopening that have to be in our reopening plan. Those factors range from everything from general health and safety guidelines, development of policy for screening for both students and staff, as well as visitors, classroom testing and therapy rooms, transportation. We're looking at operations about the flow of students in and out of the building. We're looking at screening, as I said, PPE, how we're managing protective face coverings and making accommodations for those that are unable to, for medically documented reasons, wear face coverings. We have to look at contact tracing, working with the Department of Health in developing procedures and policies, facilities cleaning practices, which we've been working on, and Nick Moretta, our operations supervisor, has already has a plan in place. We have to look at meals and food services and how we're servicing students, including free and reduced. We have to look at recess and health and physical education, as well as extracurricular activities and social and emotional learning. The list goes on, but there are 15 key factors that we'll really focus on tomorrow with the larger group. And we'll be doing some subcommittee work to really draw down what are the main areas that we know will work in Wall Township, suggestions, as well as some challenges that we know are present. We also have a parent survey and a staff survey that we hope to have out before the end of the week. And we will also be sending out a student survey to get their perception of their experience in the virtual learning environment, and also to really gather some data around social and emotional health and wellness and where they are and how virtual learning has impacted them. So we want to hear from those three stakeholder groups. Today, we sent out confirmations of parent participation in stakeholder focus groups. Those begin next week. We have a series of three stakeholder focus groups on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week. We used a system of selection whereby we had 235 parents apply through the Google form, which we were really pleased to see so many parents respond to be involved. And we used a selection process whereby we identified parents who had perhaps unique expertise, perhaps in the medical field, healthcare field, some educators. We also looked at district leadership, PTO presidents, some CTAC members, and then we used a computer randomizer to select the rest of our groups based upon the rest of the members for each group based upon the selection model. So we really tried to be very, very objective in our selection processes, particularly with such a large group. And I think we wound up with a strong representation, including parents of special ed students, parents of ESL students, parents of students with 504, and then, as I said, some of the other stakeholder groups that I mentioned earlier. So those focus groups will be held next week. We will have a series, set of focus questions that we are developing currently, Dr. Handerhan and I, and we'll send those to the focus group participants. And the goal of the focus group is to present the initial plans as well as these 15 critical areas for school reopening. And I framed it with the email confirming their participation as we are a solution-seeking group. This is a group that we're not going to stay focused on looking in the rearview mirror. We know where we came from and all of the challenges present in that, but we need to make sure that we're looking at solutions and looking at each of these obstacles from, as I said, a solution perspective. So we're really looking forward to hearing from our families and hearing their ideas that they're bringing forward to the stakeholder focus groups. The current model that we're looking at involves a combination of in-person live instruction on campus or in schools, as well as virtual learning. And the initial model, although it's not confirmed, but the initial model is a cohort model where we would bring in half of the enrollment in each building and class on an A day, 2 A days. So they would get 2 live days of instruction with their teacher on, let's say, a Monday and Tuesday. And on Wednesday, all students are virtual live, working in live instruction with the teacher. And then on Thursday and Friday, the B cohort students come in and they are in live instruction on campus, while the alternate group is at home in what we call asynchronous instruction. So they're doing sort of preloaded work into their Google Classroom, but the teacher is not live with them because he or she is working with the group that's on campus. We're really establishing a set of priorities in looking at what these models are. We looked at a lot of models, and some were not necessarily feasible from a logistics standpoint, a transportation standpoint, but first and foremost, we're looking at health and safety. And that has to be the priority of the plans that we look at. And when we look at the health and safety of our students and our staff, and by extension, their families, we know that the priority has to be limiting exposure and limiting interaction. And that's the one thing that I think all state agencies agree upon. The cohort enrollment and bringing in half of the students at a time accomplishes that, I think, the best out of most of the models that we're looking at. Again, we're looking forward to the committee meeting tomorrow to go through that model and see if there are some challenges that we're not looking at right now. We know that one of the biggest challenges will be childcare, potentially especially at the elementary level, and childcare for our staff when they have their own children in other districts and depending upon what their schedules look like. So we're looking at a plan that would potentially alphabetically divide the student enrollment so that we could link siblings together so that first and foremost families have all of their children on the same schedule. And potentially some families may have the ability to have older children in high school or late middle school grades helping with, overseeing their siblings potentially. So we're also going to be looking at conversations with area daycare and childcare centers to let them know what our model is when we finalize the model, and to see if they are working to provide any options for families, and we will provide those resources and contact information for families, and continue to explore additional ways to support our families during what is admittedly a very difficult time for families. Questions?
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Krupa.
I just want to ask Dr. Gleason, what did you say Wednesday would be? I got the first Monday and Tuesday and then Thursday, Friday, but what's Wednesday?
So right now what we're looking at is one day being an all virtual day where all students are home and teachers are working with live virtual instruction. That again, minimizes exposure. An additional day, it's live instruction rather than asynchronous instruction. And then, as an additional benefit, it provides a midday during the week for additional cleaning throughout all the buildings while students are not in the building and before the next cohort comes in on Thursday.
Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you, Dr. Gleason. Just a quick question. So, we're gonna have some holidays sprinkled in there and different things like that. So, Thanksgiving's on Thursday and we have, Friday off after that, so is it possible that those Mondays and Tuesdays flip-flop, and how is that, sort of distributed equally?
That's one of the areas that immediately came up, and it's one of the areas we'll look at in developing that schedule so that there's a balance of those days. And certainly, in November with the two between Teachers Convention and Thanksgiving, the Thursday, Friday group would automatically be at an imbalance. But we're working on looking at fully through the school holidays, and that as long as we give parents enough notice about what days may be somewhat different for scheduling purposes to recoup some of those holiday times and balance out the cohorts, we'll be addressing that in the schedule.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Aaron?
So with the Wednesday being a virtual model, will teachers and staff be required to be in the buildings at that time, or will they be able to be virtually from their own homes?
The goal would be for them to be working from home on the virtual day. As I said, sort of an ancillary benefit of having that additional virtual day would be that the buildings would be able to be cleaned without students or staff. We would have the full day for cleaning. So that's an added benefit of that schedule. We're also looking at that day. As I said before, we know that students cannot stay online in virtual digital instruction for 7 straight hours. So we are looking at the possibility of having a reduced instructional day where the students would get all of their classes on that day, but it would be sort of an early dismissal for students, and then professional development every Wednesday for teachers in the afternoon via Zoom and Google Meet. And in that roadback document, you can see that one thing that we know is that teachers need a lot of support and professional development. We want to really ramp up our game from the spring. We were forced to, embrace virtual learning and instruction and learning very quickly and with no time to prepare. So now we have to look at how are we preparing teachers and how are we providing them ongoing support. So that schedule builds in a consistent day of professional development for teachers.
Russell?
Doctor, I understand that there's no solution here that's going to please the masses. Everybody's got different views and feelings and experiences. So, to try to find, the best or whatever that might look like is, in my opinion, virtually impossible. So the work towards something that's going to be fruitful and beneficial is an ongoing task, as you know. I guess a couple of questions. Is it assumed, or should we assume, that there's zero chance to go back 5 days a week?
I think in a district our size, we've already done the net square footage on all of the classrooms. We have that information back. And I would say by and large, that most of our classrooms using net square footage for social distancing purposes would limit us to about half of the enrollment in most of those classes. So, in a smaller district where you might only have 11, 12 students in a classroom, or a larger facility where you have a lot of additional space where you can start to break classes up and have auxiliary space, you can possibly do that. We've looked at that. We're continuing to look at that. But what we're finding is that doesn't seem realistic for the majority of our population. But with that said, one of the things we do know, and I'm sure we'll hear back in our stakeholder focus groups, is that our perhaps most vulnerable population of students with special needs and students from special populations, where they typically have much smaller class sizes, sometimes under 5 in a class, or 6, or maybe 8. Those classrooms can accommodate those students in live instruction a total of 4 days that we have teachers on campus. So our goal is to bring back, where feasibly possible and within the health and safety guidelines, to bring back our self-contained classes, and also to be able to provide testing on site and related services on site live.
Understood. Thank you. And then the pillars of, or the 15 tenets that you mentioned, or 10 tenets that they have to meet, none of them are weighted, right? They're all equally distributed, that you have to meet them all admirably or at 100%. There's no one more than important than another, correct?
They do not weight them, Russell, and those 15 critical elements of operation must be addressed in the plan, and the plan must be submitted and made live to your community 30 days before school. So we plan to have that submitted to the county and available to the community by August 8th.
Great. My final question is, a large number of people that work in the district or send their children to the district are employed in other districts or employed other places, right? And the back to work thing is evolving for lots of businesses. But in terms of schools, do we have any plans to coordinate with districts where we maybe have neighboring relationships or staff that work there or whatever? Because I think part of the challenge is if I'm a Monday, Tuesday, this week, but my work plan is Thursday, Friday in my district, or Wednesday, Thursday, that becomes, and I know it's impossible to, but is there any discussion about having any joint discussions with other districts to try to make that, at least a discussion, I guess?
We haven't gotten to that granular level yet. And absolutely, it's something that the child care issue is something that's very much central to our conversation. The only thing most important is health and safety. We do fortunately have a weekly, not a monthly, but a weekly county roundtable with all the area superintendents. And we are in an ongoing conversation. It's Monmouth County only. So we have our neighboring districts, the superintendents involved, and we're sharing our plans as they're evolving. Most districts are right where we are right now, sort of honing in on the plan that they think will work best. But most are not ready to release those plans yet, but we are sharing them as they're developing. And I think that's a great point. We're never going to be able to match it up district to district, but if we can certainly, look within a radius of however many miles of neighboring districts, we could certainly try our best. I think anything we can do to support our, school community during this time is incumbent upon us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Dr. Handerhan, did I miss anything in there?
I think you nailed it. I think you did a great job. There's been so much detail, and I just Dr. Gleason and I have had many conversations prior to my arrival, and she has her leadership in district and also countywide. I certainly would like to shine a light on, because it's there's a lot of hard work that goes behind creating, and examining a lot of different scenarios.
Thank you, Dr. Handerhan.
Dr.
Ken,
Gleason,
did you? Go ahead, Ken.
Dr. Gleason?
Yes.
My question is, we should probably know who our vulnerable teachers are. And I mean that with compassion. I don't mean that to embarrass anybody, but this should come into all our thinking. This should be a part of, see how vulnerable we really are, to come up with a plan with this thing.
Absolutely.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I agree. And I think that will be part of our fact gathering in developing our plans to ensure we really kind of know where everybody is. And so we agree with you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gleason.
You're welcome.
We will move on to finance and facilities. Mr. Gartz, did you want to start?
Brian, I would ask you to take the lead if you don't mind.
No problem at all. We have, 5 items on the agenda. The first one being the standard enterprise accounts update for the end of the year. We have an update on both our before and after school program, or referred to as the WRAP program, as well as our food service program. With regard to the WRAP program being closed for the last 3 months, being required to continue to compensate employees as required by law, and with the lack of any revenue coming into the district, there was significant losses on a monthly basis for the last quarter of the year. So at the end of the year, the WRAP program lost $106,000 at the year end. There was a balance in the account at the beginning of the year, approximately $60,000, just above that. So to make the program whole at the year end for 2019-20, the district has a requirement of putting, performing a transfer from the general fund to the enterprise for the WRAP program of approximately $45,000. And that is being done and may be adjusted based on the actual audit by the auditors, but based on our projection, what we have to date, we've created the transfer of $45,000 to bring them back, bring them whole for the 1920 school year. With regard to food service, obviously a lot larger program. It's a bigger enterprise. The loss in the food service enterprise account for the 1920 school year was about $191,000, or just over $191,000. However, from the prior years, our unrestricted balance, which doesn't consider our fixed assets, but our unrestricted balance was a little over $180,000. So to make the program whole at the year end for the current school year, prior school year 1920, we're required to transfer $10,000 into that account. Again, that may be adjusted once the audit is completed by the auditor. So there was a transfer of approximately $55,000 from the general fund to the enterprise account. We're currently looking at both programs for the 2021 school year. Now that the actual school day is starting to pan out, what it's going to look like, what's the school week going to look like, how we're able how we're going to be able to provide breakfast and lunch options for the students, as well as the free and reduced, and the ability for the district to offer the before and after school program in the hybrid remote schedule that we're looking at for next school year. Any questions on the enterprise accounts?
Hey, Brian, I would just
Yeah.
like to add, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make note that, in looking at the, the attachment, it would have been much worse. I mean, because we still had to provide the free and reduced. The numbers would have been greatly reduced if we didn't get the federal reimbursement on the April, May, and June of roughly, I'm eyeballing about 55,000-ish. So that would have really put us back if we didn't get that reimbursement on from that. So from the actual sustainability of just the actual program itself, we would have even lost more. I guess I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that everyone's attention, that without the reimbursement from the federal government, we would have really been in a worse spot.
And the reason we were able to claim that reimbursement is because the district continued to provide the lunches to the free and reduced population. And that was the food service workers that volunteered to come in to prepare those lunches, to set it up for delivery by the volunteers by WIP, which was a benefit for both the families and in turn benefited the food service program because, as you said, it did bring in revenue for the last few months.
And just to follow up on Mr. Hall's point, I think it's important for the board to understand that, going forward, these two programs started off the year, as Brian said, with surpluses, and that's what helped mitigate the negativity of the year that we've endured, as well as the PP loan that Joe just mentioned, or funding. Going into next year, we're just getting to zero. So it's important that we understand as a board that these two accounts are on our radar to, try to mitigate loss as much as we can, and to evaluate the delivery of all of these, as Brian said, in a way that's going to be as net neutral to the, to the board and to the town taxpayers as possible. I don't know that I believe that that's going to be feasible, but we're going to be watching it very closely. So I just want to make that clear as well.
And depending on what happens with the legislature with regard to if there is in fact a school closure and employees of school districts are going to continue to have to be compensated, and we don't have the ability to bring in revenue or bring in the revenue that we would anticipate if we had actual students on school property, that's something that the Board of Education has to be aware of also.
How much money have you been cut from state aid as of right now?
The estimate, and I'd have to look at the final numbers, was projected at $162,000.
And that's in addition to everything else. That's in addition to the enterprise accounts and everything else that's on top of it, right?
Correct.
Yes,
Correct.
Ken.
Yes. Okay, seeing no other discussion on item one. With regard to number two, we have the facility projects update. One project would be the stadium field drainage project that was performed in-house by the operations department. They put in perforated pipe on both the home side and the visitor side to collect rainwater runoff from the field. They put in some stormwater collection, again, perforated pipe with stone and some dry wells just south of the stadium field to collect water before it runs onto the field. It appears to be working very well because after the significant rainstorms we've had, operations department has been out on the field and it has been dry. So the sod was added to the home side, and the remaining work on that project is installing sod on the visitor side in the area that they installed the perforated pipe. Okay.
Okay, I looked at when you come in, where the team comes on the field. This just happened at the when we went to the graduation. They put sod down I guess they never watered it. We're back to this deal again. And it's all dried up. It shouldn't be like that. They have to water this stuff when they put it down. So somebody's got to look at that. It looks terrible. And when that, give me one team going across that stuff, they're going to kick it all up. It's just worthless.
Yeah, well, I think in that one area, they're going to look to change the ground cover so that it's not sod. That area had been disturbed from the work they had done. The sod that was placed on the football field, which has an irrigation system, is growing. It is working out. However, where they added sod between the sidewalk and the gate, the irrigation system for the football field does not extend there. So there's no irrigation beyond the actual state fenced in football field. But rather than, like, they didn't have the time to put in seed and mulch and have it grow naturally, so they put the sod down. But unfortunately, the time they put it down by the graduation date, it had turned brown or dormant, but it was safer than having it an unfinished dirt area. So that was the purpose of keeping it there.
Yeah,
I have to be addressed on a long-term basis. I agree.
I get that. I understand that. I figured that out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With regard to the removal of the modular classrooms at Central School, the project is complete from the construction standpoint. We're closing out the permits. The final electrical inspection was conducted and was approved, as well as the final building inspection was conducted and was approved also. We are waiting on the water or the plumbing permit to be closed out, or the final inspection and approved, as well as the fire inspection. There was a letter that was being provided by our fire service company verifying that the modular classroom units were disconnected and that the system for the building is still operational. That letter was provided to our facilities manager today. It'll be turned over to the building department. So we anticipate having the permit closed out by the end of the week. With regard to the project cost, we anticipate the project, along with the work from the county, the tipping fees for the disposal of debris at the landfill, and as well as hiring the contractor for the electrical work to come in under $25,000 for the entire project. We're still waiting on any final invoices and for the final closeout of the project, but we anticipate it being below $25,000.
And most important with that project, I'm not trying to pick on you or anything with this, but
Not at all.
most important with this project is what they call, I don't agree with it, but they call it a timeline. And where we went with all these permits, when they were zeroed out, whatever we did from point A to point Z, because that's going to be an Oprah request, no doubt. Somebody should look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, I for one would like to say, getting them out for under 25,000, I think that's a big win from where we were back in August when we were dealt this position. I think at the end of the day, we were thinking it was going to cost much more than that. So, I wanted to take the opportunity to at least thank you for, working it and getting it, like I said, getting it to a very manageable 25,000. I mean, I would like it to be less, but some of the thoughts that we had early on, we were thinking it was going to be much, much more expensive. So, not that I had any, knowledge of it. I just thought to get rid of them, it's going to cost a lot of money. So, seeing the total number is 25, I'm very happy to hear that. So, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, well, I agree. And when you go to bid and you receive a bid for $163,000, even the architect's estimate was significantly higher than that. And I have to tell you, and I sent an email to the county, the Department of Public Works and Engineering, and I'll follow up with a letter to them. Just, the work that was done by the county, and you know, the effort that was put out, I was so impressed by the crew that they had out there, their timeliness, their work ethic. You know, they were punctual. They, you know, they worked straight through. It was coordinated with the trucks, you know, coming and going, and the pieces of equipment out there. I was really impressed, and I'm hoping that we can utilize this shared service agreement that we have with the county for additional projects. Granted, we work with them with the paving in the district, but I was very, very impressed with the work that was performed by the county as part of this project. So, and yes, and for the work coming in for under $25,000, including the, you know, disposal fees and everything I could, you know, include in as a cost to the project. And that's not even factoring in that we don't have the construction administration fee that we have to pay the architect, which we would have if it was contracted out as part of the bid. So that's a cost we're not incurring. I'm not factoring that in. I did factor in the credit we got from Blewett Steel for the metal that was delivered separately to them, because that was funds to the district that offset that cost. But again, that was about $1,100 that we receive, that we will receive from for the metal that was dumped there. So.
Yeah, Brian, that's just a follow up to Joe's message. I think it's important that you know, and a great you know, time for us that we've moved on from these trailers. We've gotten them out in a very efficient manner, and as a board that we, you know, have learned from the process of what happened in the past, and we'll continue to be open as we've been with the Mercury situation. If things arise, this board is going to be open and clear about how we move forward, and I for one am very happy that these trailers have moved on and that we can move forward.
Absolutely. C, under projects update is the HVAC improvements, summer 2020. That is the air conditioning project. And it's not only air conditioning, it's a replacement of the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or the heating and ventilation and the adding of air conditioning in spaces that currently don't have it. At Old Mill, Allenwood Central School, Old Mill is really just unit vents in less than in the 3 classrooms. And Allenwood Central are a lot more considerable in size of the scope of the project and cost. However, the project is moving along very well. We anticipate completing the project, you know, a couple weeks to a month ahead of schedule, depending on, you know, which school. But Allenwood and Old Mill, we anticipate those projects being substantially complete by the end of July. And then all efforts will be reworked over to Central Elementary School, and it is anticipated that'll be completed by mid-August or to the 3rd week in August, prior to the start of school, which is very good news. Their contractor, Sunnyfield, is the same contractor that we had last year, phase 1 of the project. We did encounter some unknowns during the construction, which is not, you know, uncommon for a $2.9 million project. We had the electric was a little different in the field as opposed to the drawings at Central School. Rather than each unit vent in each classroom being wired with its own circuit back to an electrical panel, they were grouped together where there was multiple units on one circuit. With providing unit vents with air conditioning, we can't have that. It would be too much of a load. So we need to provide a dedicated circuit to each one of the unit vents coming back to an electrical panel. There's a cost associated with that. The change order for that work is about $18,000, which includes another scope change with regard to coolant piping that has to be run between the boiler room and the building because of equipment or piping in the crawl space that was in the way would not make it feasible to run in an existing chase. I don't want to get into the weeds so much. A credit was applied to that change order because we anticipated having to rent a generator for the electric at Central School based on the duration of the electric being disconnected with the change of service. However, we don't anticipate having the electric down for a period of time that would warrant a generator. So there was a credit applied of $5,000. So the The change order with regard to change order number one is $18,494. That'll be on the agenda next week for approval. There was consideration that there may be additional change order because what we identified as panels behind the unit vents that were first suspected to be asbestos containing material. We had it tested and they were determined not to be asbestos containing. So there would not be an additional cost to abate that asbestos and replace the panels. So that was good news with regard to the cost of the project. However, we did discuss replacing the materials of the ceiling in Allenwood School. The installation or the reinstallation of the existing drop ceiling is included in the contract because that was part of the work. They had to remove it to do their installation of ductwork and the HVAC. This would be the replace, and they're required to replace the existing ceiling for a cost of just under $6,000. The proposal is $5,775 to purchase new material, drop ceiling and grid to be installed in Allenwood School. It was recommended by administration, the committee of the F&F committee, I believe is in agreement in recommending that the change order goes forward for approval. When you remove a drop ceiling, if any panels were to be damaged, they would be replaced, but there's a good chance that the panels would not match. And it would look like we put back a ceiling that was an original ceiling and that was taken down. So I think this would make a big difference at the completed project. Any concerns on the project, the schedule, or the change orders? That'll be on the agenda for next week as an action item. Nope. Okay. The last capital projects, we discussed the capital projects in the 2021 school year. We have two significant ones. One is door access and building security, which is about $385,000 was budgeted. And then the other project was enhancing the PA systems or communication systems to address any areas where the communication is not sufficient enough for the building administration, and to make sure that all students and staff receive the notifications that are coming over the PA system in the event of a lockdown or an emergency. There's been areas that have been identified as either dead areas or lacking the same sound quality or loudness, if you will, as the remainder of the building, such as bathrooms throughout the school. In the gymnasium, there is equipment, but it isn't sufficient enough based on the noise that's been experienced in the gym. So there is a project to enhance the communication, the PA system, speakers, both inside and this also includes outside the building. There is a significant amount dedicated or asked for the exterior of the buildings. We budgeted $205,000 in the 2021 budget for that project, and that covers all the school buildings. In discussing the project with Mr. Davis, our school safety specialist, who's kind of spearheaded those, school security and coordinates with all the building principals and at all the buildings, where they've identified that the communication and the enhancements to the PA system is a priority over the door access and building security at this time. So we're looking to move forward with that project. That's going to be, coordinated through the technology department because it's heavily dependent on their coordination and their review of the, whether it be the quotes through the co-op for ESCNJ. This way we ensure that the equipment is compatible with the equipment that we have in the building, but it'll be coordinated and additional information will be forthcoming from the technology department with regard to the equipment and the actual proposals for the communication. But out of the two projects, we're going to be moving forward with the communication first. In addition, we're looking at what may be coming down the pike with regard to school-related costs with the closures, school-related costs with with partially being remote learning, and we're trying to identify costs that we can hold in the budget as we progress through the year, so that we have the ability to make decisions to reallocate funds. And that's why there was a priority put on one of these projects instead of moving forward at this point in time with both projects. Any comments, discussion?
Well, Brian, just to follow up on what you said, in committee, we discussed that there's still a strong possibility that that second project will get done before the year's out, but we wanted to be cognizant of the possibility of needing those funds, potentially finding it through a grant or some other way. And so we're not walking away from the project. The budget is 12 months, and we could get to it. We might not. We don't know where we're going, as you said, and we want to be show that flexibility. So that was part of our discussion as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it is a year that runs through June 30th, and we have the ability to extend it into next summer as well, because it's a capital project. In conjunction, we also discussed that we're applying for a grant, the Alyssa Law Grant. Mr. Davis has applied for that. We have to show compliance first, and then we're able to, if we are in compliance, we're able to use the funds from the grant for other projects, which we've earmarked for additional security cameras, and it could also be utilized in conjunction with the funds that we have for door access and building security. Okay. Item 3 is the network subscription, the NFHS. To broadcast events from the athletic stadium as well as the main North Gym, as was discussed, in a prior workshop meeting. It was recommended by Mr. Radu. Again, with the current environment, we don't know, what it's going to look like in the fall with regard to the ability to have spectators, how many spectators, and also to provide a service for those that are not comfortable actually going to an event physically and may want to have the opportunity to view sporting and other events put on by the school district through a subscription being live streamed. The initial proposal, provided by the athletic department was for $7,500 for 2 Pixelet cameras and to be able to broadcast live those athletic events. It doesn't require manpower. They follow the action as part of the algorithm, in the equipment. We looked at the installation cost was $2,500 and the equipment cost was $5,000. We estimated that the cost, that realistically and looking at the project, that would be for just covering the stadium and the North Gym. However, we can use our own equipment to live stream, where we would be handling it with personnel or with students, and we could still live stream it through our subscription through the network. So we anticipated that there would be additional costs through the school year if our existing equipment was not compatible or that we had to purchase additional equipment from the high school. So we estimated that perhaps the project would cost $10,000 up to $12,500, although I think it was more in the area of $10,000. But the scope, the cost of the initial scope of work to provide a camera in the high school stadium, the varsity field, and also the, which is one and the same, the varsity field is the stadium, as well as the North Gymnasium inside the high school, was for $7,500. Recently, the company has put out a promotion where they are providing the equipment for free. So that's at a savings of $5,000 for the equipment, and that the installation of $2,500 would still have to be covered. Since our committee meeting, Dr. Gleason has reached out to see if we could have an organization donate funds to offset the cost of the installation. Dr. Gleason, do you want to add to the conversation?
Yes, I did reach out and communicate with the Crimson Knight Foundation. The foundation began working with the district, partnering with the district about 2 years ago with their goal to raise funds to provide additional value with regard to programs, facility needs, and a variety of other identified factors. I reached out to the foundation on, I believe it was Wednesday of last week, and they agreed. I explained the cost of installation, provided them the brochure and some of the information about the NFHS camera system. And they have agreed to fund the cost of the camera installation for the 2 cameras that were in that original projection, excuse me, to the cost of $2,500. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gleason. With that, I think based on our discussion at the committee level is if we could have the $2,500, or if the district could find a way to have the cost of $2,500 or the cost of the installation covered by either the boosters or some organization, which CKF is a foundation, but a booster, and it would not be coming out of the general fund, that it would be something that would be supported by the Board of Education. So we would look to move forward with that unless there's opposition from the Board of Education to do so.
And Brian, just to follow up, we had discussed this, I forget when, but a meeting or 2 ago. And, at the price point that it originally came in at around 10,000 or so, there was discussion amongst the board about it being, a little bit more than we were willing to spend at that point for the delivery of that service. And so what we talked about in committee was that with the price reduction and the opportunity to potentially provide this service, technically at no cost to the general operating fund of the school district this year. If there were to be athletics this year with the guidelines of who can watch and how many people can watch and so on, we felt it was a reasonable recommendation for the full board to consider based on the updated numbers, costs, and potential funding source. So just to give the board some further background on what we discussed in committee.
And just so the board is aware that there is a subscription cost to, which I think we've discussed in the prior month's board meeting with regard to purchasing a subscription, but there would be a cost to a parent or a resident or to anyone who wanted to subscribe to the live stream of Wall Township's athletic or whatever events we're going to be broadcast on the network. Any comments, discussion? Oh, yes. Go ahead, Christine. Sorry.
I think Christine's frozen.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're choppy, Christine.
Oh, God, no.
She needs to work on her internet.
Can you hear me?
No.
All right, go ahead, Christine.
Okay, can you hear me okay? No.
Just turn your volume off.
Hopefully this will work. I hear you.
Yeah, I want to hear you. Want me yourself from a computer? I'll play
Concerns in terms of
Hey, Ralph, can you just get her message and talk to us for her? Because this is not working very well.
Yeah. All right, hold on a second.
hardwired.
Christine,
How about now?
talk again, Christine.
Okay, how about now? Okay, how about now?
No, you're still choppy. Right. No, not working.
I'll send an email.
All right. It's not going to be voted on tonight. It'll be for next week, so we'll have a further discussion on it. Go, Andy. Go ahead.
It's fine.
Hello. This question's for Russell. I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding. We said there's no cost to the district this year. Was that just your phraseology, or is there going to be a cost in the future?
My understanding is that this is a one-time purchase and connectivity to the service. Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Ralph or Joe, if you heard differently, but I didn't hear any other long-term costs in the proposal or read them.
No, you're correct.
The cost is for the equipment and the installation of the equipment. The renewing cost would be to those that are subscribing to the network so that they can view live streamed events.
Right. And where this company makes money, right, Brian, is that if they provide us cameras and we pay the $2,500 through the Crimson Knights to have it installed, the hope is that there'll be just say grandparents in Florida that wants to watch their son play basketball in the gym or football. They'll pay the, $19.99 yearly fee, $50 yearly fee, $4.99 a monthly fee, whatever the fee structure is, that, but they would get a cut of that. They would make they would get some of it, while the district would make money as well. Is that the way you understand it?
Correct.
Right. So where they make money, Andy, is in the subscriptions, in the recurring monthly fee that you would pay to have this service. Or you pay once a year, you pay a fee, and that will give you the whole year. Or, again, all the different pricing methods. But the district would not be on the hook. The district would actually get some revenue, and then that would be a negotiated point between us and the contractor on the service, on what the price point would be and those types of things. And we would probably look around Monmouth County and see what the going rates are and so on and so forth. But as far as an ongoing cost for us, it would really be a revenue generator in future years, with providing a service that could grow if we elected at some point to use some of that, maybe to buy additional cameras on our own, and make sure that other athletic fields or other athletic gyms, we would open it up to even more, and then we would be able to do it ourselves, as Brian said earlier, and stream it on the same streaming service. We could go full service. That would be up to us if we wanted to do it. But this proposal is just for the one gym and the one main football field. No expense out of pocket for a taxpayer, and they're actually a revenue enhancer going forward. Is that roughly correct, Brian?
Absolutely.
Hey, Brian, I have Christine's concerns, but just to back up for a second, the price point that they sell it for is $9.99 a month, correct? And then it's anything over that.
The school district has the ability to set the cost of the subscriptions. And I don't know all the breakdown of the variety, but I believe you can, have for the season, you can have for the year, maybe it's a particular sporting event. I'm not 100% sure, but the district would set the subscription rate. There's a minimum cost that the network receives, and the district receives the upcharge as a revenue generator.
Okay.
So the district will set that.
But they do have, I thought their minimum was $9.99 a month, and then anything over that would be what we would get.
If that was in the literature, then that may be true.
Okay.
So the district would have to make the decision whether we're going to set it at $9.99 a month, or we're going to utilize it as a revenue generator. There's different ways to set up that program.
Okay. So this is from Christine. Her concerns are, one, What about the sports who do not use these facilities? And two, how about the theater, choir, band, and orchestra? You know, so if we needed more equipment, would we, the district, would have to purchase it? Or do they allow these kinds of events, or is it strictly sports?
No, they allow the events, and I think, you know, that's what was discussed, that we could utilize other equipment, like the special equipment that is included during this initial proposal for the North Gym and for the stadium they're self-operating. You know, you don't need somebody there working the equipment, holding a camera, so that, and following the action. The cameras are permanently mounted and they follow the action. What the district does have the ability to do is utilize mobile equipment or utilize their own equipment, and then have it live stream over the network. And I say that as I'm repeating what was communicated to us by Mr. Radu, the athletic director, as part of the discussions we have. That's just a little qualifying statement with regard to that. But the idea is, and that's why we said, you know, the initial cost is $7,500. However, if we wanted to expand the utilization of this to cover other areas, you know, there could be costs associated with that if the, you know, the TV studio at the high school, their equipment as it currently isn't adequate enough for the events. And I in all honesty, I don't know why it would not be, but I don't know. And that's why when it was first presented, yes, it was $7,500, but we anticipated that there could be additional costs associated with it. I mean, one way to approach this is to operate it as an enterprise fund, because it, you know, it could be self-generating based on the sale of subscriptions, and depending on what the cost would be, with the idea, hey, you have the initial installation, the equipment is being provided free by the provider, CKF is donating, and then based on the sale of subscriptions, those funds could be dedicated for this purpose, to expand the capabilities of it and the programs, you know, for the auditorium or the intermediate school. And then those funds would be, the funds utilized for that would be the funds that were generated by the subscriptions sold as part of the program. This way, there's no issue with regard to general funds being utilized for this project in the future. Or we just say, hey, it's going to be a revenue generator for the general fund budget, just like the other sources of revenue. And we're going to anticipate that in future years, depending on how this would pan out in the fall season or in the current year, whether we want to expand it as part of our general fund budget.
And just to be clear, even if we had the equipment, let's say, we do not have the ability to send it over a network, because they would be setting up this private network. Is that correct?
Now you're getting out of my expertise, and I don't want to say something that's going to be incorrect. I mean, we live stream our board meetings on YouTube. I don't know that that would be the same as, you know, the subscriptions being offered through the NFHS.
If I could just,
I don't know.
Brian, if I could jump in.
The issue with utilizing equipment and personnel and students that has been expressed by the athletic department and the high school is trying to get those students or staff to cover the, you know, these games, and to have them being manned by, you know, students or staff, where these are, you know, the benefit of this system is you don't need people there. You don't have to schedule anyone. And all sports, but perhaps baseball and softball, you know, field hockey prefers not to play on there because of, you know, the length of grass. But lacrosse can play on it, soccer can play on it, football can play on it. And now that we put the new bleachers in, we've expanded the fence. It may be more feasible or more desirable for those other teams to play on the stadium field, because before the issue was it was very narrow and the fence was very close to the sidelines for those other sports. And now that we've replaced the bleachers, we've made it wider, we've expanded the fence. So it is it allows for a larger field. That doesn't answer the question though for baseball, softball, and
Well, yeah, if I could jump in, my feeling on this is that we have an opportunity to, for zero out-of-pocket cost, provide the stadium and the basketball, which would be using the gym, or any other sports that would use that gym, coverage. Now, is it perfect? No, because there are other sports that may not be affected, because if there's sports that wrestling that uses another gym, this camera, the special cameras that are not manned are not in those other gyms. So in the other gym or at the baseball field. What I think Tom basically had said was that if we had the manpower and or the wherewithal to have them taped, or have them someone there, that they would be the same, using the same stream as the football game or the soccer game or the high school basketball game. I would suggest that, if we decided to go down that road where we wanted to expand it to other areas, well, then, the high school diamond club or the softball club, may need to look at, saying, well, football, paid for their cameras or their installation. Maybe we could do the same thing where we could go to the wrestling clubs or whatever and say, hey, you guys want to show these things? If you're not in that gym, if it's in that gym, we can show, but if it's not, we need a certain camera that follows it without anybody manning it. This is how much it costs. Are you guys interested in doing that for your wrestling community or your softball community or your baseball community or your gymnastics community, your volleyball community? I think that if we're just looking at it like, oh, well, we're not doing it for everybody, so we can't do it for football and basketball, I think that changes the football and basketball. And I think we can do it for the other ones, but we would have to enter the same kind of negotiation and same kind of, partnership with them as we did with the football side. So I don't think it's something that we throw away just because we can't do it. And as far as the arts, I think that's a great thing. If we could get it into the auditorium to show, the fine people that work on those productions, same thing. If there's people there that want that, then they help us raise the money to buy what we need so that they can be part of the whole program. So again, I just don't think we can say no just because it doesn't cover everybody. I think that's the wrong way of looking at it myself.
And if I could just follow up to Joe's point, Brian, just to answer some questions. I'm looking at an email from Tom Redu on May 29th to Brian and some of the finance committee members. It clearly states in his response from the folks at NFHS that we can use our own camera and still broadcast it to our network with a hardwire internet connection or with Wi-Fi. So we can use this broadcasting network to broadcast from other locations with a handheld camera. Again, if there was the manpower, student managers, et cetera, who are willing to do that. So that's an option. We can broadcast from another building, such as our intermediate school. If that was something that we wanted to do, it's going to take a little bit of work to get done, but obviously we can do it. It's capable. So that would mean the arts in a theater or in a music setting room or auditorium. We could certainly do that if we chose to. And as Joe said, I think it's this is the first step in trying to do this. And I think for a zero cost, no long-term annual fees, as it clearly states in their proposal, that it's something that we should consider and grow into as we learn how to use it and learn what its capabilities are. The camera system is great for sports because, as Brian said, it doesn't need manpower. It has software that follows the ball and follows the humans with its technology, and that's one of the upsides of this versus just our own camera with student managers, et cetera. So we do have options to do more with it to answer some of the questions.
And just as a clarification, this is not being paid for, or the donation is not from the football club. It's from the Crimson Knight Foundation, which is not associated with the football club. It's just Crimson Knight Foundation. So just want to clarify that.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions or comments on this? Seeing none.
Okay. Next item is the no contact ticket system. This was also discussed with the F&F committee, and it was briefly discussed at a prior workshop meeting. However, the recommendation at this point, with regard to the no contact ticket system, it allows individuals to purchase tickets online. There's no cost to the school district for this service. The cost is borne by the user, the end user. There's a service fee. There's a couple different companies that provide it. I would leave that to the athletic department. They're reviewing those, looking for the most cost-effective company out there that is reliable. But the idea is that you can purchase tickets for a game or for a season, and the cost is borne by the individual user. I don't want to speak for the committee other than to say that the recommendation would be to go forward as long as there was still the ability to purchase tickets in person, and there would still be tickets sold at the gate or at the game and tickets collected at the gate, so that you don't have to utilize it. It would be a convenience for individuals attending the games, and therefore there would be a convenience fee associated with it. But you could still go to the ticket booth, buy a hard ticket, and hand it in at the gate. It's convenience, and it would look to address some of the concerns that have been expressed with regard to lines and delays in entering events for the district.
The other checkbox that it hits, Brian, is the recommendation from the state that we look to move to as many cashless transactions as possible.
Yes. Good point. Okay. Seeing none, the last item is the student transportation facility. We have discussed at prior board meetings, we currently are located on Old Mill Road. We have been provided verbal assurance that, we're going to be able to remain there during the 1920 school year. Based on circumstances, we don't anticipate that, at this point in time, there may be development. But again, we're on a month-to-month lease at that location. So it would be prudent to make long-term plans with regard to our transportation facility. We have a brand new superintendent, so it's day 2. So we're really just having it as a discussion point for the Board of Education, because Dr. Handerhan has to be brought up to speed with the history and all the facilities and options that we've investigated and performed feasibility studies. But we have a shared service agreement with Howell Township that we can locate there if we need to. There would be a cost associated with that in each year of the budget. We budget for improvements for office and driver facilities at that location, and for some other improvements that may be necessary for us to be housed there. In addition, the board has discussed the district locating our transportation facility at the Monmouth County Executive Airport, because if there's an offer that if the owner receives approval for us to park buses there, that we would be able to do that at no cost. And that would be at no lease cost or rental cost. However, we've performed a feasibility study, and there would be a cost in making improvements so that we could house our transportation facility there. We had it on the agenda for our F&F committee, and as it's been a while since we've spoken about it. We have a lot of brand new board members, so if there's any questions or comments that we have regarding the different options that were being considered, or specific to the airport lease, because we have a draft lease that we have the ability to finalize, but in doing so, we need to be cognizant of the cost that we would be looking at in order to make improvements for us to be able to house our transportation fleet there. Mr. Garst, was there anything else we wanted to?
How much?
No, I think one of the things I just want to summarize, Brian, is that once Tracy gets up to speed in committee, we will revisit this sooner than later, because the timing of some of the reviews and the changing in the economic situation and land availability, et cetera, might present new options to us. And that's just something that we threw out there as consideration as we move forward. So once Tracy gets caught up to speed at some point and has enough knowledge to weigh in and voice her opinion as to where she thinks we should be trying to stay or her experience in all this, then we will take that into consideration and continue to try to find a permanent home as best we can.
How much does the airport want?
The airport would be no cost. No cost to the district. There would not be a monthly or annual lease fee or rental fee. However, they would need to obtain approval from the township for a variance for us to be able to have our buses parked there. And then we would have to make capital improvements so that we could in fact park our buses there, such as drainage, pavement, access drive, and facilities for our drivers and management of the fleet.
And how much is the estimate on that, Brian?
I get that. Do we know a forecast of how much that's going to cost?
For the site improvements, based on the feasibility study that was performed by our engineer, just for the site improvement, that would not include a facility for the administration, but the site improvements is approximately $2.5 million. In addition to that, that would be for just to park the buses. But if we wanted to have a facility for the drivers and for the management for the department, we could rent space in an existing building there, but improvements would need to be made, or we could bring in portable equipment, like such as an office trailer and bathroom facilities for the staff that would be there. And that would be an additional cost. The feasibility study was for the site improvements, and that was approximately $2.5 million.
So after all said and done, within 10 years, I'm assuming it's a 10-year contract lease. Do we know what it is? Is it 10 years, 15 years? What is it?
Well, the lease agreement has not been finalized, but that would be a point of discussion that the Board of Education would have to consider.
Okay, I don't think they're going to give you more than 10 years, but the bottom line is, and the point I want to get out, we don't own the property. We don't own it, and we are captive to that.
That would be correct.
Anybody have anything else? Any questions?
Could I chime in real quick? Because
Sure.
I sat down and this is a tough issue because there's no good solution. So I know Dr. Handerhan is gonna be weighing the same things that we all have and the town has, and we're gonna weigh again. I looked through all the assessments in the town and acreage. The district owns 201.466 acres in town. We don't utilize a majority of it. This is an asset that the district has, and at this point, if we're not going to use it, we got to think about how best to utilize those assets that we have. It's like having a savings account. It's an investment. So I mean, I think we need to look at this with fresh eyes. There's a lot of new people on the board. There's a new superintendent, and work through the process and figure out how best to manage this, because this is a space and an investment issue. So, that being said, I know that's how I'm going to look at it going into our committee meetings and out here on the board. But I just want everybody to make sure that they have that in mind as they're going through this.
I'd like to make another point with that. That's a good idea, but as soon as we started going through this, the minute that Wall Township says that they're looking for property, all the real estate prices go up. We started out at 2.8 million, and we were getting people, architects, telling us it might be 12 million. It might be 4. I mean, ridiculous. So we have to find a method to go out there. As soon as they find out the Board of Education is spending money, we get killed.
It's a valid point, Ken, and there are ways to do broker protected investment, investigations that we'd have to look at. The other question I would have, Brian, naively, and Mr. Merlino, maybe, is this potential project a referendumable project? The purchase of land, can that be blended into a referendum? Or is that a whole separate item?
It could be. It could be whether it's if you're borrowing money to do it. If it's not in the current budget, that would be a referendum item.
Got it. Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, if it's an improvement project on our existing land, it could be included in the budget or included in a referendum. However, if it's going to be purchase of new land that the district doesn't currently own, it could only be done by referendum. We wouldn't be able to include that in the annual budget. So that's one of the difficulties that the district would have when we're looking at these other properties that we don't currently own. Like, it's one thing to lease them, but in order to purchase them, we would have to include that in a referendum.
And just to remind everybody that the property that we own, hundreds of people for years have come every month to tell us not to do that. Hundreds. And I don't want to go through all that again.
Anybody have anything else? Mr. Smythe, Russell, you guys have anything else?
No, that would conclude the agenda for F&F.
That's it for me, Ralph.
Okay. All right. With that, we will now move on to it's old business, which I guess we kind of do have some, but also some new business. So I will turn it over to Dr. Handerhan.
Hi, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank the Board of Education for the privilege of leading this school district. During the last 2 months, despite being limited to a mostly virtual world, I've had the opportunity to meet with many members of this fine school district. I would like to thank Dr. Lisa Gleason, Mr. Brian Smythe, Ms. Kim Keeter, Dr. Hank Cram, administrators, faculty, and staff for their support and assistance in helping me transition to the district. They have been very generous with their time, and I'm incredibly grateful. On the evening of July 9th, I had the privilege to attend the Wall High School graduation. The spring was a difficult one, and the uncertainty of graduation was a continual challenge. It was obvious that honoring the class of 2020 was a top priority. I wish to acknowledge and commend Principal Sergio and the high school team for their extensive planning and beautiful execution. The ceremony was lovely, and I was thrilled to see district administrators, teachers, and families in attendance. At this point, I would like to provide a follow-up to last month's update on the gym floor in the high school where mercury was detected. On July 1st, members of the Board of Education, the WTEA leadership, and Health and Safety Committee and administrators met virtually to discuss the findings and recommendations of the New Jersey Work and Environmental Council, WEC. It was communicated that additional air samplings are needed. These additional air samplings will be conducted. The one test would be taken on a day with a locally high temperature. A second test will be conducted with the mechanical ventilation system turned off, and a third air test would be conducted to determine the indoor background level. By definition, the background level is the lowest concentration, which is theoretically achievable by remediation. And we will be scheduling these tests in the near future, and we will be focused on trying to schedule them on the hottest days available this summer. So I just wanted to provide you with an update, and we will continue to do so with the Mercury gym, or the Mercury in the high school gym floor. I would also like to mention that we are in receipt of the Central School Trailers report from Dr. Cram. The board and I will be looking at the report and digesting it, and this report will be revisited at a later time. So I just wanted to provide you and certainly our public of these updates.
Thank you, Dr. Henderhan. Before I go to public comment, I was alerted earlier, a friend of mine passed along some information that the Wall Township School District lost a longtime employee, Mr. William Quackenbush Jr. He was 89. He worked for the district for 30 years as a bus driver. Many people I know actually knew him. I mean, he had quite an accomplished career. For 54 years, he was the owner, him and his family were the owner of a Gulf station in Belmar. He was a member of the Belmar First Aid Squad for 68 years. He was president for 2 years, treasurer for 38 years. His family and him, they operated Quackenbush Getty Service since 1929. And he was there for 54 years. And after his retirement, he worked for the Wall Township Public Schools for 30 years. He was known by all the sports teams for being on the sidelines, cheering them on. Just an incredible person who did a lot of volunteer work. So on behalf of the district and people that know him, we certainly would like to send our condolences to his family and thank him for his service to Wall Township. So with that, we will go to public comment. And first person, Chris, are you there?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good evening.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Chris Gentile. I'd like to first thank Dr. Gleason for your help over the past several months and your outstanding communication to the community and parents. Dr. Henderhan, I'd like to welcome you to Wall. We look forward to working with you and partnering. I have a daughter in Central School here in Wall, and I have a couple of questions. First of all, I'm disappointed to see that we started several minutes late at 7:56 and spent about 45 minutes speaking about issues related to sports facilities, costs, cameras to monitor those facilities. The intent of my comment here today is specific to the educational platform as we look to what the new world looks like in 2020 and 2021. Dr. Gleason, you mentioned that priority is the health. The priority here is the health and safety of our children and our educators and limiting exposure to those individuals. You mentioned the 15 critical factors that the New Jersey Department of Education has mentioned in the Road Back document. And you also stated that the district has looked at the net square footage and has determined that it is impossible to maintain a 5-day, full-day schedule live, specifically for our K through 5 students. So I have a couple of things, and I understand that I have 5 minutes to speak and that potentially my questions will not be answered directly. So it's my first time participating in one of these. So I'd like to go through some of my thoughts. The first is that I'd like to know what considerations have been given with regards to a full day school program, 5 days a week. On pages 17 and 18 of the NJDOE, the Road Back, it states that there are recommendations in place, guidelines, not regulations, not laws, related to 6 feet social distancing, but these modifications can be made as according to the American Academy of Pediatrics in 3 feet of social distancing. In fact, that document states that there are other modifications that can be made, such as barriers, desks facing one way, etc. So I'd like to understand what considerations the district has made to optimize these recommendations in terms of social distancing between 3 and 6 feet, and the modifications outlined in the guidelines, not laws, not recommendations, but solely recommendations, Dr. Gleason. I think something you stated is that the government has stated a hybrid model is necessary. And I'd just like to clarify for everyone on the line that that actually is not an accurate statement. These are guidelines. In fact, the NJDOE has stated that these are guidelines that each locality should take into consideration. In addition, I'd like to understand the district's considerations around childcare. You mentioned, Dr. Gleason, childcare is the biggest concern as it relates to the elementary school children, and that we want to keep kids potentially with their family members and have older children potentially help oversee their virtual learning. I find this to be a illogical argument. If the public health and safety of our children and educators is at the forefront, we then are exposing children to child care centers outside of their existing cohorts, outside of their small group interactions within the schools. And so I'd like to understand some of the child care measures as well that have been determined. Pages 10 to 11 of the NJDOE, the road back, state that a child care plan must be in place. I'd like to understand who is involved in the planning process. What is the plan for transportation of those students to and from child care services? And I'd like to understand what learning guidelines and requirements will be in place for those child care centers. As a parent of an essential worker, I can tell you my children have been in an essential worker daycare since May. Those daycares refuse to initiate virtual learning. So the onus falls on the parent after hours. And for a child who has a learning disability, this is detrimental. Page 43 details the quality childcare and partnerships that must be in place. I'd like to understand what partnerships have been developed before the district has made a determination to move to a hybrid model. In addition, page 54 outlines that there's a need to provide a schedule that allows equality for all students and families. So I'd like to understand the considerations that have been put in place to account for dual working households, as well as socioeconomic families that may not be able to have the luxuries of hiring homeschooling, nannies, and additional childcare services. At the end of the day, my recommendation is that the district needs to pursue a 5-day full-day program, as these are guidelines implemented by the NJDOE in the road back. And I'd like to understand the careful consideration implemented by the district to initiate hybrid model. Up to this point, unfortunately, I've not heard that. I'd appreciate the additional information. Lastly, I have requested to become a stakeholder. Dr. Gleason, you mentioned there were certain criteria initiated to choose those individuals who are stakeholders. I don't understand that criteria. I'd like to be involved in those decisions. Thank you for your consideration and for your attention to these matters.
Thank you, Chris. I don't know how much Dr. Gleason can answer or Dr. Handerhan can answer this evening, but if you could possibly shoot them an email with your email address and phone number so that they can get back to you with a thorough answer, we'd appreciate it.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do so. And I'd be interested in knowing how you plan on sharing those responses to the broader group. Dr. Henderin, I really hope that you can make an impact here in Wall. We're counting on you to help us out here. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gleason, did you have any comments that you wanted to add this evening to this, or?
Well, first of all, thank you, Mrs. Gentile. I appreciate you sharing, you know, what is clearly a deep dive into the document. I think it's important that parents do review the guidance from the DOE document. As you're likely aware, we are deep in the planning stages, so I don't think at this time I can provide you, finalized information or plans, but I have noted all of your questions and concerns. And as we work through all of these big hurdles and challenges that we know are facing the district and our families, ranging from childcare to special needs to your input, we will respond to all of these questions. But we are deep in the planning phases right now, so I don't think it would be prudent for me to try to answer all of those questions currently.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gleason.
You're welcome.
Hi, Betsy Cross. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that you can answer some of Chris Gentile's questions tonight. I mean, at this point, I think the board should have answers for her. Those are all great points. And I know how this works. A lot of times you just don't get back to the person. So I'm all for, I'm going to send over to Dr. Handerhan. And first, thank you for coming to the district. We couldn't get you here soon enough. I'm disappointed in just hearing, what you said about the trailer situation, that you're going to be revisiting it at a later time. Why would you revisit that at a later time? So if you could answer that tonight, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You just told us exactly what you were doing for the gym floor. And I'm guessing it's because you're going to put kids in there, but we had kids in unsafe conditions for years. So that's not good enough to tell us that you're going to look at it, I'm not sure when, with the board and get back to us at a later time. That is another big red flag for me. So I'm guessing maybe Mr. Cram, I'd like to open that report now. If that's a final report, I want a copy of it. Something's not right, and maybe he has given it to another state agency, but something's not right here. And that response, that is a red flag. I listened in on a couple-hour phone call about what South Carolina is doing. It's a district of 42,000 students, 56 schools, and I'm sending it to you so you can see it. These people are so far ahead of us. It's not even, you're not even close. You should have, this meeting tonight should have been on reopening the school. For us to have to be on here till 9:40 hearing about the nonsense about cameras for $2,500 wasting our time is terrible. All this should have been about is opening up the school. That's all we care about right now. We don't care about those stupid cameras. You gotta be kidding. The bar was set so low in the spring. You have got to get going here. You've got to get these surveys out. How did we not have the survey out by now? Other schools got them out a month ago to staff, students, and parents. You might get it out by Friday. You got to get it out. Do you have parents in this 45 group meeting tomorrow? You should have parents. There's all types of numbers in South Carolina. The parents were asked, do you plan on sending your kids in September? And what would you prefer? Would you prefer hybrid? Would you prefer full-time? Would you prefer virtual? They had 22,000 responses. Just start looking at this. There's so much here. Let's not reinvent the wheel. And let's go to the good schools that had all this done that we thought Mr. Cram was doing. This is, you should have had a lot of this done. Poor Tracy Handerham has to come into this mess. I mean, I'm glad I was picked for the committee because I've been doing a fair amount of research. I jotted a bunch of other things down. We need a grant writer. I have said this for 10 years now. Nothing is more important right now as a grant writer. Please look to hire one. Nurses, we're going to need nurses. Let's not wait until September to start maybe looking to hire some. How many days a week are you planning on professional development? South Carolina, I think they said 4 or 5 days. These teachers need training. Some of them are great at it, some of them aren't. And is it going to be paid or is it going to be part of your 180? That was a discussion in South Carolina. Jumping down a bit, money in the bank. We switched banks very quietly. Dr. Handerham and your attorney, you need to look at this. Something was wrong. We weren't making interest for 10 years. And now we suddenly switched to a new bank. Health insurance. Are you estimating increases now due to COVID-19? The trailer demo, what a disaster. Brian is holding documents, withholding documents. It's the usual from him every single day. It just goes on and on and on. And yes, Mr. Ken Wonderak, where is the timeline? I keep asking for it. You should have it. I think you were some type of detective or something in your earlier days.
Ms. Cross, thank you. Your time is up. Chrissy?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Chrissy Opegard, the chairperson of the WTA Health and Safety. Thank you for letting me have a few minutes. First of all, I just want to reiterate that the goal of the Health and Safety Committee is always looking forward and not backward, and what should have been, but rather what we can do to fix what needs to be fixed. Always taking the safety and health of our students and our staff as paramount. Dr. Handerhan, I thank you for taking the time and the attention.
Chrissy, I'm sorry, I somehow hit mute on you. You there?
Thanks a lot, Ralph. Am I back?
I am so sorry about that.
All right, I don't know what you heard now. So
About
I'm
30
just,
seconds.
I'm sorry. So I just want to say, I'll start over. The goal of the Health and Safety Committee has always been looking forward, not backwards, not at what should have been done, what was done wrong, but rather what we can do from now to the future to fix what needs to be fixed for the health and safety of our students and our staff. Dr. Handerhan, I want to thank you for jumping in, as been said a couple times, into this and taking the time and giving the attention to further testing for any remediation of mercury in the South Gym at the high school, as per the recommendation of NJWEC and the WTA. Transparency, the transparency is paramount. WTA and Health and Safety are grateful for any cooperation that we have. We look forward to those data points so that we can look at them together with NJWEC, who has been very forthcoming and very helpful for those of us that are not environmental engineers. So I thank you for that. And just a word of caution, and I have not researched South Carolina opening of school. However, I have been in South Carolina for several months at my home here. I would not want to follow their timelines or their recommendations. It is a hot mess in South Carolina right now. Our numbers in Horry County are up by the thousands every day. I just would be cautious to look. I have friends that are teachers in South Carolina, as well as right over the border from me in North Carolina, and they are as frightened as I am to go back to school. So I would caution you to look at that data as been suggested, but look at it also at what has been, what has been happening down here, because it is a frightening place to be. I mean, I'm still quarantined. You in New Jersey right now are much more careful than it has been here all along, and you are starting to open up. So, I would caution that. The numbers are not just the people coming here on vacation. You go into a grocery store and you're the minority if you're wearing a mask. So just keep that in mind. Testing down here is just starting and our numbers are through the roof. And thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Chrissy. Be safe.
Hello?
Samantha? Hi.
Yes,
Sorry
you can
about
hear
that.
me. Okay.
Yes, good evening.
Great. Good evening. Welcome to Wall, Dr. Handerhan. We're really happy that you're here. One of the things this district can be really proud of is the way that the community came together to prepare and plan for school closures. Our students went home and did not miss one day of instruction. Now our district is facing an even more difficult task, which is reopening our schools safely. I don't envy any of you who are having to make these decisions, especially because there's simply no way to make everyone happy with your choices. Like it or not, I think we need to be realistic in acknowledging that virtual learning and remote instruction is part of how schools across the country are going to get through this. Whether it's used as part of a hybrid plan, we need to return to it full time due to short-term or long-term closures, or it's used as a tool to ensure continuity of education for students or entire classes who may have to quarantine. Virtual and remote instruction has to form part of any plan. Especially since these decisions on closure and quarantine may once again not be made at our district level. For many families and students, remote and virtual learning that took place in the spring was a significant challenge on many levels. For others, their children thrived and preferred it. Some educators made this paradigm shift easily and others struggled. Making this experience manageable for everyone, students, parents, and teachers is going to require an unprecedented level of social and emotional, educational, technological support and investment. I keep reading in educational spaces that the virtual learning we're going to turn to in the fall will and should be different. It's being called a robust virtual learning experience. And I'd like to know what this will actually look like for students in Wall Township. Could you talk a little bit about what you envision and how it will be different and improved? Are there any discussions or plans to wire classrooms so that teachers can more easily record classes in their rooms without students present using the materials they need from their classrooms like smart boards? Teachers can have the best virtual lessons plan, but if they do not have a sufficient Wi-Fi connection in their home, it's impossible for them to hold live classes. Is the district thinking of partnering or negotiating with internet service providers to secure Wi-Fi access for our staff in addition to our students, especially if Wednesdays will be live virtual instruction? How is the district identifying our teachers who excelled in the virtual environment and using their knowledge and ability to help create virtual curriculum and train on best practices? Because we absolutely have the talent in this district to lead in this area now and in the future. Remote instruction doesn't have to mean total reliance on devices and screens, especially for our youngest learners. They need to have access to a wide variety of books at their level, textbooks, worksheets, math manipulatives, and supplies, so that their learning is hands-on and age and developmentally appropriate. We have to make sure that virtual and remote learning does not further widen the achievement gap due to inequities. For example, if a child has to complete an assignment about nonfiction texts, if they don't have a nonfiction text in their home, they can't do it. Many of the assignments given in the spring said, use what you have at home. And we should be making sure that we're leveling the playing fields with what students have at home. Not every home has a calculator, ruler, glue, construction paper, or child scissors. The classroom environment ensures that all children have what they need to learn. It might be a good idea to put together some kits for the elementary students with some basic educational supplies for them to have at home. For some student populations, virtual learning or remote instruction in any form is not going to meet their needs, despite the very best efforts of our educators and parents. I would hope that the district would prioritize thinking outside of those students for more in-person instruction, even if that means thinking outside of the box in terms of spaces, such as using the private rooms at the library or downstairs at the municipal building. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Samantha. Have a good evening. Dr. Handerhan and Dr. Gleason, did you have any comments on that one? You're still muted, Dr.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Samantha. Again, like our other speakers tonight, some really important questions. And all of those points are absolutely included in our conversation. And the one thing I would say, while we're not at the point where we can provide specific details because we are still heavily in planning, the one thing that we have agreed to is that we've learned that there are ways to make the virtual days much more, as you say, robust. And that was part of the process of how do we do it better. I think Chrissy Opegard said it best when she said we can't keep looking back. I think we have to glance back to see what we did well and make it better, and the areas that we struggled with, and how do we provide supports for teachers to make that better. So I think you're going to see an improved version of the live virtual day. That'll be much more, as I say, interactive and not so much about asynchronous learning on that live all virtual day. And as far as the points about teacher recording, we are looking at some of the digital recording devices that teachers used readily to record their lessons. As far as teachers recording themselves in the classrooms, these are all parts of the discussion. And there was another question asked a couple of speakers ago, it may have been Mrs. Gentile, but because you're asking sort of similar questions, the professional development piece was really important. And I know that Mrs. Cross, you mentioned in the South Carolina plan, they were questioning how teachers needed, 3 to 4 days of professional development. We're fortunate that we have 2 days of professional development built into the collective bargaining agreement at the very opening of school. And one of the parts of the plan that we're working on is a consistent professional development day weekly for teachers in addition to that. So we recognize the fact that now more than ever, professional development is important for teachers so they can deliver really the best instruction for students. So that is absolutely part of the plan as well.
I would also like to add that common planning time, because we are actually in a planning stages and didn't have to create something on a moment's notice like we did last spring. We're in our planning stages. We are keeping at the forefront opportunities for teachers to dialogue and also dialogue with their students. And that's with an in-person component, it is, we will be able to monitor and receive the students' feedback, the teachers' feedback, and the goal is continuous improvement. And the students have a lot to say, and we also look forward to hearing from them as well. So we are in our planning stages, and I truly appreciate all of the ideas, because at this point, this is, as that was mentioned earlier, this is a big a big undertaking, and we really do have to think creatively. So I appreciate those that offered up creative thoughts.
Thank you. And just so the record is clear, our district started planning at least 4 weeks before any other district in Monmouth County and maybe even the state. We were way ahead of the bar, and by all counts, we did an incredible job. And certainly a lot of credit goes to Dr. Gleason for all her hard work, and certainly all our principals and the teachers and everybody that came together and worked hard to do what we did. And when we got the word to close school, we were ready to go, where other districts needed to continue into the following week just to try to figure out what they were going to do. We already had a plan in place. So saying anything other than us being prepared and doing the best job that we could is just simply not true. Russell?
Yeah, just to follow up on some of the things Dr. Gleason, Dr. Hanrahan, you just said, Ralph, I think the constructive feedback presented by tonight's speakers and public members is always helpful and appreciated. Obviously, we have a wonderful public that's invested and wants the best for what we do as we move forward. As was stated by one of the speakers, it's important that not everybody's plan is going to be enacted, and that As they say in politics, sometimes being a centrist is the best for all. And that's where we have to kind of shoot for the best plan that's going to meet as many needs as possible. We have to keep that in mind. I do think one of the comments made that was not constructive in reference to the report on the trailers. You know, the board that voted to shut the trailers down immediately, and then this board that inherited the challenge, has moved adeptly and quickly to address the trailer issue as best as possible within the limits of the constraints provided. And we are, as I said earlier, proud of the fact that those trailers have moved on. We're going to address the issues as best we can under the circumstances with a superintendent that's 48 hours on the job. And I think it was not constructive to say anything other than we're going to give her the time to review what was presented by our interim superintendent, discuss it with us, and come up with a game plan to make sure things like that don't happen again. And that's what we're going to do. And that will happen in due time. It might not be on your time schedule or anybody else's time schedule, but it will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. That actually, I had that jotted down. An excellent point. It's 48 hours for Dr. Handerhan, and already it feels like a lifetime. Mr. Krupa.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just coming to my mind is also how I think we have to change the rhetoric from transparency to good communication. That's really what people want. And the transparency is, I'm done with that word. I think good communication is what we need. All of us want that on the board, all of us in the community want that, all of us in the school district, any position want that. And I have a lot of confidence that that's going to happen. We're talking about our own training and improving our communication with each other as a board with Dr. Handerhan and the plans for that, meaning a retreat and trainings, right? I also want to say that in addition to the people that spoke tonight, there were several emails that were sent to the entire board from the public. Hey, out there, everybody, thank you for sending those, whether they were glowing or not glowing emails, that it was input and information for us to consider as we go forward. That document that you're talking about, everybody, that road to map to what we're going to do and restart, it's over 100 pages. It's like 140 pages or something like that. It's got several areas. There's a lot to digest. And I have confidence that with the input that we've already received and what's going to happen going forward, that it's going to be the best that we can do. And that when man plans, God laughs. So let's hold on tight and do the best that we can.
Thank you, Mr. Krupa.
And sorry if I offended anybody, the religion, but too bad.
Yeah, it's very important to remember too that every day things are changing, and you know, just so everybody, if everybody's paying attention, this week was the first week the governor did not reopen anything since the beginning of May. So everything kind of just took a little bit of a pause. So, you know, we certainly as a state don't want to fall back in the other direction. We want to continue moving forward, and you see things, what's going on in South Carolina and some of the other states. You know, they're where we were, and certainly we don't want to go back there. And you know, we could turn around tomorrow and the state could say you're not opening schools, or you have to open them every day. You know, we are directed by them, and you know, there's really not too much wiggle room outside of that. So our team will continue making the plans necessary, and you know, and we'll see where it takes us. Did anybody else on the board have anything?
Yeah, I
Brian?
do.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I just want to address some comments that were made tonight, and it sounds like we're, you know, Groundhog Day. We just keep going over the same things over and over again, and I really thought we were past it, but evidently not. We had comments talking about the bank and red flags, and you know, we did something wrong. back on January 28th, we took about 15 or 18 minutes to explain the whole TD Bank, how interest is calculated, what the fee structure was at TD Bank. I'm checking my notes, January 28th meeting at 1:37 mark for 15 minutes. We explained it in detail. I was very upset to hear what Betsy had said about that, and I was new to the board, and I decided to take a look at it. So I took a deep dive, and I wrote her an email that painfully explained to her in detail what the process was. That response yielded back an email back that included 16 additional questions. So the issue is every time you answer a question, you get hit with 16 additional questions, and some of them are nonsensical questions. So at the time back in January, I made it clear that we would look to RFP, request for proposal, for a new bank, because maybe TD Bank wasn't the bank for us. And we did that. Now, we may not have done it as soon as she wanted, but July 1st is usually the date that we try to start everything new as a new year for the school, as all the contracts usually go July 1st to June 30th. So we put out an RFP for a proposal for the banks. This is after being told repeatedly that we had to get out of TD Bank because they were just ripping us off. So the F&F committee did an exhaustive search. We looked at proposals from, I believe, 5 or 6 banks, and TD Bank was by far the best by offering us no fees and almost double the interest rate of the other bank.
Provident Bank, Joe. Provident Bank.
Excuse me. Yes, I'm sorry. Provident Bank, the new bank that we went to. I'm using TD. TD Bank was our old bank. We went to Provident because they offered us almost double the rate and, of course, no fees. We had an F&F meeting on Monday, the day before the meeting on Tuesday. On the previous Friday, Brian had put in his agenda, the date, the selection of a bank. Well, he didn't know which one we were going to select on Friday, but we knew that we were going to, the F&F committee was meeting on Monday, and we would decide based on the information which one we would recommend to the board for a vote. So the agenda that went out on Friday just said to be determined. Monday, we had our F&F meeting. It seemed pretty simple. We looked at all the proposals. We had a discussion about them. We decided to go with Provident. And that was it. We communicated that. Brian made the adjustment for on the agenda that went back out to the public, changing it from to be determined to Provident. Again, this idea that somehow that we're red flags, we're rushing through. I mean, my God, we've been told for 6 months or a year, as she says, that we need to change the bank. And now we finally changed the bank, and we do exactly what we're supposed to do in the way we're supposed to do it, and it's not good enough. And it's frustrating as heck to be up here and try to do the right thing, and still, no matter what we do, it seems to be wrong. We have issues. There's no doubt this district has challenges, and that's where Dr. Hanrahan is here. But to worry about the bank and the interest rate that we're getting, when we've explained to you that we were getting interest, but it was offset by fees. And now you may argue that, well, we shouldn't have had those fees. Well, again, that's, as Mrs. Opelgard said, that's in the past. I can't change what previous boards, or I can't change all that. All we can do is what we did. We went and got Provident Bank. It's going to be a new relationship. We have a new attorney, a new super, a new bank, and we're going to, and we'll see whether or not a new auditor or not as we move on down the road. So I just wish that, like I said, I guess we could just move forward from the bank. I think that's something that I'm not going to talk about it again. And if I see anybody else talk about it, I just don't understand if they don't understand the answer, or they just don't want to understand the answer. So that's all I have to say about that. My last thing is, I'd like to really thank the high school administration. I was represented the board at their senior barbecue at the Oak Tree Lodge last week, and Rose and her staff and some of the other administrators did an unbelievably super job there. It was well planned out, social distancing. The kids made their tiles that they hang up in the school. It was really a great event to see, and the kids were so appreciative of it, and they really. You could just see I saw so many of them coming up and wanting to hug the Rose and the rest, but knowing that they couldn't. But just to see I would say friendship that they developed was really touching to me. I really thought that was something that you kind of see in the movies where the kids love the principal. So I do want to congratulate them for a well-run event, and it was so nice to see. I wish more kids would have showed up, but again, I guess with the social distancing, probably they just had right about the right number. So that was a big success. And in graduation, again, I would like to thank them for having me there. I was enjoyed it very much. I thought it was a great event, and I think they did another good job on that as well. So that's kind of my rant for the night. So thank you, Ralph, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Joe. Chris?
I have one thing. Andy, I agree with you 100%. This transparency term is an elitist term that just doesn't apply here. My point, I also like to say to Mr. Smythe, I didn't mean to indict anybody in the BA office. The whole thing is that we have to get that file. It's not timeline. It's just having it organized. And Ralph, you made a great point. Nothing goes from one day to the next. Sometimes you're 2 weeks in and you got to go back a week. And that's where all these dates come from. And then we get confused with all this stuff. And people look at it one way, you look at it another way. So this actually has to be done because we can't waste all this time doing all. We got too many other things to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Chris?
I'm just going to keep this short. Look, I'm speaking for myself. The goal, here is to get as many kids back to school and in the classrooms as possible. We all want to get back to a sense of normalcy, but at the same point in time, one of our highest priorities is to keep our kids safe. And we're going to do that as a board, right? So whether that's a hybrid class to start or, whatever, type of, schedule and structure, that the school starts with, our goal is still, going to be to get as many kids into the classroom and to, regular learning as possible. A couple things, day 3, we have a forum in Dr. Handerhan's, new tenure here. We have a forum reaching out to, multiple people. We had an outpouring of, folks who wanted to be a part of this. What I would say to, the folks, I'm going to try to get on there as best I can tomorrow morning. And I would say, if you're in that forum, reach out to other parents, right? So we want, we want this communication, this good communication that Andy just perked up when he heard me say that. We want that to continue. I just, leave by saying, hey, listen, there's no magic bullets or silver bullets in this world, but that doesn't mean that we're not looking for one. And I thank everybody, for all their hard work and dedication that, that you've all put into this district. And, we continue to take it one day at a time as things change. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Russell?
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Hall said in reference to the Finance Facilities Committee and the banking. We're clearly operating within the rules that are allowed for the committee to operate. We are thorough. I can promise you that we are thorough and we're efficient in our work. And to Brian's credit, we had a third-party advisor, Phoenix Advisor, that also provided guidance in our discussion. And one thing to keep in mind is the choice of the bank as a professional service is a one-year decision. And the primary purpose of choosing a bank is not to make the most interest. That is not the primary purpose of investing school monies, is to make school interest. It's not an investment account for an individual. So while it's a piece of the puzzle, it's not the only piece. And to Mr. Hall's point, for months we were chastised for getting out of TD Bank. We moved out of TD Bank and were chastised for who we moved to because information wasn't shared in a timely manner to a certain individual. I'm not sure whether the individual cares about what the bank is or the fact that they're not part of the decision. So this committee, as long as I'm the chair, is going to continue to operate in a very thorough manner under the rules that are allowed to operate, and we'll make the best decisions with the information that we have to move decisions forward and communicate effectively with the board as necessary.
Thank you. And I have a message from Christine Stites because her service is a little choppy. She would like to congratulate the high school on their beautiful graduation, the Wall High School PTO on their senior class celebration, and the Wall Intermediate School PTO on their 8th grade celebrations. Best wishes to our awesome graduates and the staff who have supported them along the journey. I also attended the senior graduation. We told parents for months that we were going to figure out a way to get it done. And to Rose's credit, along with her staff, and I saw Ms. Embom there helping, and several other administrators and teachers. They got it done. It was a beautiful graduation. It's unfortunate that not all the kids took advantage of it, because certainly graduation is something that you remember for your whole life. But needless to say, there were about 100 students there, and parents were socially distanced in the stands. I mean, certainly it could have been a poster for what this state is trying to relay out to people in the CDC. But it was a great event. So, best of luck to all our graduates. I'm sure they're all going to go on to do great things, and thank you to our staff for making that happen. They certainly made a lot of parents happy, that's for sure. Anybody else have anything for this evening?
I just have a correction. That report roadmap was 104, not 140.
Still a lot of pages.
Did you
Mr.
just read it,
Addisio,
Andy?
Yes, Mr. Smythe, I'm sorry.
not to beat the bank anymore, but also just to correct the record with regard to the statement that the district did not earn interest for the last 10 years. That is inaccurate. Makes for a good soundbite, I guess, but it is a false statement, as well as the statement that records are being withheld by the district or by myself. All requests that are submitted under the Open Public Records Act are provided a response in a timely manner in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Records Act. And if anybody takes exception to that, in each correspondence that's provided to them, they're advised at the bottom that they can file a complaint with the Government Records Council, or they could file a complaint in Superior Court. With regard to all the accusations that documents are being withheld, to my knowledge, a complaint has not been filed with either. But all responses that have been provided in compliance with the Open Public Records Act. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smythe. Anything else? All right, seeing none, could we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Chris, second by Russell. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, everyone, aye. All right, thank you, Dr. Handerhan. Thank you, welcome. And everyone have a good evening.